So, tell me your name and your experiences at Standing Rock.
Well, I'm Andy Argo, and I went out there back in November. I was there for about a month. Got there about the 18th and stayed through, I believe it was 15th of December was when I left. Um, say probably one of the earlier experiences and something that really kind of pierced the public consciousness, maybe to the same extent that some of those videos did with the dogs. Was the night on the 1806 bridge. That was my second night there, and right away, I noticed everybody was rushing down the 1806 to the barricade. I mean, I didn't know what the barricade was at that point. Yeah, actually, I remember some guys telling me, it's like, "Oh, you're new. You should probably hang back." I didn't hang back. I ran up there. I have a pretty keen historical sense of injustice. It's something I'm very passionate about. I've always studied the history of American genocide and oppression, and there's something a lot more visceral about being there on the bridge that night, and in particular, rubber bullets, tear gas, and police brutality. These are all kind of things I expected to see, but the water cannons being deployed on the bridge that night, there's something about that just got me the moment I saw it, because this was like a 20-degree day. What's the line from the Morton County Sheriff's Department, that you're using less than lethal weapons? Of course, if you're spraying down people in sub-zero temperatures with water cannons, that is not less than lethal. That could induce hypothermia. And I remember days after that, the medics were just overwhelmed dealing with the fallout from all the people dealing with all the conditions that come from being sprayed down at temperatures like that. I myself, I wasn't sprayed down. I was still pretty new. I didn't have any of the Tupperware shields. I was close enough. I got hit with a tear gas canister, which I discovered kind of smarts. It hit my shoulder and bounced off. Also, tear gas itself is not very pleasant either. It's kind of like smoking an entire carton of cigarettes all at once. It gets fire in your throat. But beyond that, though, the sense that night I got was very different than any protest action I'd been a part of before. Being with the water protectors there, because I've been to Philly. Was at the RNC. I did Democracy Spring earlier this year, but Standing Rock was a whole different beast. They were. You got the sense like the police there, they were waging war on those people. That's what it felt like. These people were under siege from Morton County, and what they were doing out there. I think even the most jaded person who it's still really startling to see that, experience that with your own eyes.
So, do you want to talk about any other actions that you're part of?
I mentioned there was an action we did in Bismarck, and this was on Black Friday. Now, the way the action was structured, it was kind of intended as low risk. We were just going to go into the mall and be in a prayer circle. And immediately coming into the mall, this was another jarring thing to me that I found kind of surprising, because I expected kind of the RoboCop, superfluously riot-geared folks to be out there at the front lines, that sort of thing. But they were out there in force in the mall that day, these are cops with grenades, rifles, and the full riot gear, walking around in the mall. That's a very strange juxtaposition to see, because all these people are running around grabbing all kinds of stuff for Christmas, and you'll see paramilitary troopers just milling about watching the scene. And my first thought was like, what do they expect these people to do? I mean, it's not like we're Al Qaeda, but
Say that again?
I said, what did they expect us to do? It's not as if the water protectors are Al Qaeda or some sort of terrorist group, and particularly that day, like, our action was not even meant to be that disruptive. We weren't going to blockade like mall traffic or anything like that. It was just a small prayer circle at the mall. Like 5 seconds into it, but also a couple of people, our people were already getting kind of tossed out of the mall before we actually started the action. We got into this circle. It was right in front of Target, and like 5 seconds pass, and the police give out their warning. It's like, this is a private business. We don't have religious worship here. Leave the premises. And so we're all backing away, and we're basically just backing away like this, saying water is life. And literally what happened after that is the police would shout, stop resisting, and then they would grab one of us out of the crowd and toss him to the ground, rough him up a bit, put him up in handcuffs. And that happened to about 30 of us. Particularly targeting the indigenous folks who were with us. So I was kind of surprised to see that level of brutality inside a space like the mall, because there were people there, obviously doing their shopping, and they were taping it with their phones, I think it kind of goes to it's a greater issue with Morton County, because you have this place where a lot of these officers are maybe some of the most extreme stuff they have to deal with in the Bismarck area are like domestic disputes or drunk drivers. All of a sudden, something like Standing Rock happens, and they have these millions of dollars in military-grade gear poured onto them by DAPL and the federal government. They're giving this, very quick training. Like in sharp juxtaposition to like what I saw in, say, like Philadelphia, where you had the large police presence, but mostly in plain clothes, bicycles. Made an attempt, a very strong attempt, to be to not deliberately brutalize. And I wouldn't say they did that out of like some sort of inherently stronger moral character, but I think they know in like a larger city like that, that the sort of backlash you will get from that kind of brutality is a very serious issue to deal with. Not only public relations wise, but I imagine Morton County is probably going to have litigation to deal with for years and years to come. And in a way, I feel really kind of bad for them, because DAPL's not going to foot the bill for that. Government's not going to foot the bill for that, and they're going to be left with their hat at the end of this, and it's all going to fall on them. And granted, not that I have sympathy for cops who did stuff like, tear gas and throw concussion grenades on my comrades. Sophia, who basically had her arm blown off that night on the bridge, which reconstructive surgery later, she's got the arm, but
well, can we backtrack actually to the mall? Did you happen to see there was a couple of folks from the Defend Bizman group that were stalking folks in the mall?
Oh yes.
Did you see any of that?
The pro DAPL folks. And actually I bumped into them on an earlier action too, when we were driving around Bismarck, they would do things like put themselves between us and the police, and basically just try to kind of argue and debate with the protectors. Some people in the camp thought they were like getting paid off by DAPL. I think it was more they're just kind of like those law and order types. Don't like people raising a ruckus, despite whatever cause it might be for.
Right. Those ruckus racers, those pro-oil ruckus racers.
I know.
Or anti-ruckus racers. Anyhow, but speaking of oil, obviously the big thing people talk about is water is life. But one of the questions I got to ask is, on the flip side, playing a little devil's advocate, what's so bad about oil?
Well, the big thing. I'd say two things for me personally, and one of the big things that took me out to Standing Rock. I'm from Kalamazoo, Michigan. For those who don't know, that was the site of one of the biggest North American oil spills, inland oil spills in history. And I have a lot of friends who got really sick, who had major health problems after that. People who's
like what?
I had this friend back home. He was out on the sands because basically they tried to say that it'd been fixed when really they just kind of covered up the oil with this layer of sand. And he was walking out there to basically kind of investigate. He ended up sinking into the sand about waist deep, and he's had extreme nerve damage and problems since then. He has to walk with a cane. He's got really bad skin issues on his abdomen, and it's caused him serious health problems. He has to.
But oil is just old rotting dinosaurs. Is it something that is in the oil that? I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean that and all the chemicals that are in there. That's really are not good for people. They're not good for the wildlife there. I mean, we catch these fish, and they'd be just slobbed in oil, and they tell us, oh, that's totally safe to eat, and of course it is not. And having that happen in my own backyard, something that kind of drove me out there. The overall greater issue is, a little personal anecdote. I was a political rapper for several years. We quit. My band, we quit. I read too many articles about climate change, and I figured mankind was just doomed. My sense of hope was revitalized over the course of 2016, but something about these pipelines that I think about almost every day is that there is going to come a moment, it's going to come in the next 4 years, it may have already happened, where we are going to have some clear benchmarks to prevent some of the worst climate catastrophe that's in our future. Possibly our own extinction is what we are looking in the face of. And the fossil fuels and what goes into production and traveling them exacerbates that problem. It's like drinking yourself to death when you don't have a liver. Sorry, I'm kind of tired. I'm trying to think of a good analogy.
All. Maybe just finish up with one positive final thought on Standing Rock, something hopeful that came from it.
Well, the thing I always take with me from Standing Rock, and also a greater lesson I learned from this year, is that I have hope. I really have hope again. And even I know this is day 2 of President Trump, and I see a lot of people in that same sort of despair that I was in a couple years ago. And what I saw at Standing Rock was you had this generation of people who are ready to bind together, find a new way to live and to fight against this overwhelming institutional greed that is running us down this path of destruction. And and I don't want to butcher this. This is part of somebody told me about this prophecy while I was there, about how mankind would be faced with this hard path and this easy path, The easy path doesn't have, obstacles, and you can see clear the end of it. But at the end of that